All right. Good afternoon, everyone. I am Lay, the CVA, the Community Volunteer Ambassador for the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and do our general consent statement. So as a visible disclosure, we'd like to inform any participants that any and all Zoom series is and will be recorded. The purpose of this is to provide the Zoom series to those who participated or missed out on the session. It is also provided the information for participants to refer back to. In addition to the visible disclosure, the statement will be orally stated at the beginning of each Zoom series like I am right now. I have a few people coming in, and I'm going to stop sharing and hand it off to Sarah to introduce our speakers today.
Okay. Well, welcome everybody. It's so great. We've got quite a range of areas covered, all the way from Morro Bay down to San Diego. So thank you all for joining us. And I am so happy to welcome Mike Malone back, and Don Bitz is going to be co-hosting or co-presenting with Mike Malone. Mike, as you all may or may not know, was a park ranger here for many years, and he was the volunteer coordinator here at Santa Monica Mountains. But he does a lot of volunteer work still here with the Santa Monica Mountains, but he has a real passion for film history, as does Don Bitz. And the two of them have a wealth of knowledge that they've been collecting over the many years that they've both been in the area, since the early 2000s and actually earlier, probably. And so they did, Mike did part one last month. And so he was willing to come back, and Don and he are going to do part two on Paramount Ranch. So I will turn it over, but before I do that, if anybody has any questions, I ask that you don't forget, you can, if you have a burning question, put it in the chat box, but we will have time for questions and answers at the end. But until we get there, if you could all please put yourself on mute so that we can hear Mike and Don, it would be greatly appreciated. So I'll turn it over to the both of you, and thank you again so much for doing this.
Okay, so I guess I have to share the screen here and get this up. All right.
You're looking good.
Okay, so welcome everybody to our part two. I'm thrilled to be able to do this, and of course had to come back. If you have a part one, you got to have a part two. But being that Don has been such an integral part of my life with the ranch, I knew that I needed to extend an invitation to see if he would like to join in and partner with me. So we're going to do our best to make a smooth transition, from different images, and be able to get through it there. And as Sarah said, we'll wait and hold off till the end for questions so that we can move along. One of the most difficult things for Don and I is that we've learned so much in our study and research that we really have to keep reminding ourselves through these presentations that we don't go on too long with details and stuff. So we want to do our best to respect the time frame that's given to us and for everybody else, especially, when somebody might need to take a restroom break there. It's kind of, you'd have to just leave. So we want to get it done so you don't have to do that. All right, Don, if you're ready, you there? Okay. So here we go. As I say, strike up the band. And this is actually a photo from the original studio ranch in the background there. And that's the well-known comedian of back in that period, W.C. Fields, in a movie called The Old-Fashioned Way. So to begin our show, strike up the band. And those of you who were here before, well, the wait is over. Paramount Ranch Part 2. Now, I'm going to drop back to the other one, Part 1, for just the first couple of slides here, and then pick up where we really left off in the 1950s, because when I showcased this image last time from Dr. Cyclops, 1940, I alluded to the fact that over the top of the roofs there, when you saw the movie, you didn't actually see the Santa Monica Mountains. What you saw was a matte painting in the movie. And so I, for Don jumped on this right after anyway, and started looking up websites, and he actually found some photos that I can showcase here today. So thank goodness for the internet. So the setting was supposed to be in South America, below the Andes Mountains, nearby the Amazon jungle. So here you are with side-by-side images of the Santa Monica Mountains, and then the Andes Mountains in the background there. And, I knew a little bit about matte painting, but not a lot. I know, for instance, Kerry Perkins likely has a good knowledge of it from his years in the film industry. But I found this online as well. So this is just such a great shot that showcases it. So traditionally, matte paintings were made by artists using paints or pastels on large sheets of glass for integrating with the live action footage. So you're actually seeing that, sheet of glass with a painting that the artist had drawn there. And just like the previous image, usually the matte painting was, the upper half of the image. Sometimes it could wrap around it to the sides. But I also found out that the first known matte painting shot was made in 1907, very early in the history of film. And it improvised the crumbling missions by painting them on glass for the movie Missions of California. I don't know much more than that. That's just what I've found online. But probably one of the most famous matte painting shots from early Hollywood was Dorothy and her new friends skipping and dancing along the yellow brick road to the Emerald City and the Wizard of Oz, for those who've ever seen that before. So let's move on to where we really left off last time. So we were talking about the transition of the ranch from the studio ownership, and just to go over what I may have shared or not, when the studio sold the ranch in 1943, they had a lease to use it for 5 more years, and then they were gone. The man who had purchased the property, his name was Esser Wickholm, and Wickholm began to subdivide up to 2,700 acres into parcels that I'll say on average were maybe 300 acres. And that's when William Hertz came along and purchased some of those parcels that included the headquarters area where most of us knew the Western town was, but before that, again, that's where all the storage facilities are and were located, the caretaker's house, bunkhouse, the kitchen and dining area and the mill, all of that. And that's where, of course, the Western town came to be later on. So this is an early advertisement there from back in that day, telling you, what was out there. You'd see this in a newspaper for further information, right? Phone or write. I don't think there's actually a phone number. Oh, the phone number's up top. I see it. There are a couple of them, yeah. Right. I don't know, does anybody remember those kind of phone numbers with letters in the beginning? I certainly grew up with that in my childhood. So here, this one in the next image come from actually an advertisement on the sale of the ranch, but it's very apropos to use this. This was, I believe, from when the Sportsman's Ranch investors were looking to sell it. So anyway, this is just a hand-drawn, if you will, artist's drawing of how to get to the ranch back then in the last century, if you will. But a part of this also was, and this is the tough part if there's anybody who has their has any images up on the right of us. If you close them out, then you can see everything on the screen. Whoops, let me go back here. So I put a box around what's the most important part. It really breaks down what was at the ranch there. They're calling it Camp Langhorne. That's where the children's camp was located. Those you know where the church is in the field, if you were looking at the church to the right up on a flattened area is where the camp was located. So they had dormitories up there accommodating 50 children, fully equipped. There were playing field, tennis court, basketball, volleyball courts, 200,000 gallon swimming pool, boat dock on the creek, commissary building, which is the, I always call the ranger station, the bunkhouse, the racetrack, the ranch buildings, and then a picnic area, plus the western town. So things like this that we come upon, they're great for giving us detailed information about the ranch years ago. So this will be the first pass off to Don. So go ahead and take it, Don.
First, I'll just say that I'm not as practiced at speaking off the top of my head as Mike, so I'm going to be referring to going off my notes more, so hopefully that won't be too boring. The next two movies that I'm going to talk about are the earliest substantial filming use of William Hertz's newly built Westertown that we currently know of. There is documentation of an earlier short or educational film, but we don't know the title of that. So I'd say that these are the earliest significant film shoots using the new town. These two movies were filmed very close one after another, almost back to back. And what I feel is important about them is that they give us some excellent views of how the Western town looked when it was brand new, just after Hertz family built it. And we don't have a lot of archival actual still photos, so this movie gives us a lot of great views of the various facades and angles on the town.
Want me to go to the next one, Don?
Yeah. So for example, this is one of the few pictures we do have. In this picture, you can see some of the design details of the town. For perspective, the building that's just behind the two men on the right, that would be where our saloon was. Next slide.
Okay.
And then we have pictures like this of behind the scenes of filming, which shows us also, besides buildings in the town, other buildings that were at the ranch still at the time. On the right side of the picture, you see Edgar Buchanan reclining there on the porch of a small house. And this house was kind of a mystery for a while until we started it started showing up in things like this movie. And then I saw it in a few episodes of Cisco Kid. And it was, you can see Sugarloaf in the background. This little house was in the current eucalyptus grove there where the racetrack curve is, and it was just to the right of the old caretaker's house.
Don, may I mention about those trees?
Sure.
So those three trees are in the background there. I don't think they're there anymore, and they are juniper trees. Back east, similar trees or cedar trees, but just a little footnote here, I found a photograph at the Motion Picture Academy Library of an actress, Mary Bryan, who had filmed out at the ranch a number of times. And she was at the studio in like their nursery, I'll call it. And she was kneeling down, and there were all these little potted trees. And it said that, the caption on the back of the photo said that there were 5,000 of these going out to Paramount Ranch. And as I zoomed and looked in, and then looking at, pictures like this, I realized these are, remnant of those, I would say cedar trees, juniper trees that were out there. And there actually is still one there over to the right of, what's the eucalyptus grove.
I'll go back just a minute.
Huh?
Go back just a minute. I'm not quite finished. So the pictures that we were just looking at are from a movie called The Silver Star. which came out in March of 1955. The movie actually filmed at the ranch, though, in 1954. And the movie stars Edgar Buchanan, which a lot of people will remember if you're of a certain age, as Uncle Joe in Petticoat Junction, but he also did a lot of Westerns. Marie Windsor, Earl Lyon, and then in the previous picture we had seen Lon Chaney Jr., and people may remember him most famously probably for being the Wolfman in the old Universal horror films. Now you can go to Lonesome Trail. And then very shortly, within like probably 3 months, this movie, The Lonesome Trail, filmed at Paramount Ranch. It filmed in February of 1955, and then it actually was released in July. So the time between the filming and the release was very, very fast. This movie starred Wayne Morris, John Agar, and again, Edgar Buchanan, and a few other actors like Earl Lyon that had also been in the Silver Star appeared in this one as well, because it was produced and released by the same film company. And back to you, Mike.
All right, thank you. So it was around this time that this ownership change from William Hertz to these investors. And from what I've found, the date of December 23rd, 1955 is when Hertz sold the 3 parcels he obtained from Esser Wickholm nearly 2 years earlier, and selling it to these investors. And the stated price was just over $200,000, which seems pretty significant. But these investors, which I just recently confirmed the names, finding a newspaper article online, were Paul Drummond and Jack Baskin. Drummond was in the construction business, a builder, and Baskin was a developer essentially. And it appears that they partnered up with a man named James Wiley, who had been boarding his horses out at the ranch under Hertz. And Hertz even, and I had actually met Mr. Wiley in 1999 when he happened to be out at the ranch. And it was very fortuitous because I was quite taken when I'd actually run into somebody who was so much a part of that period of the ranch history. So I very quickly did an on-site interview with him, and went back to my notes to be able to share some of this with you today. But Mr. Hertz, he had said, offered to actually sell him the ranch. Hertz had having some kind of health problems, and but Wiley didn't have the money, and he went looking for partners, and that's when he connected with Mr. Drummond and Mr. Baskin. I have seen reports there was a 4th person, but I haven't had any confirmation on that. So these investors, they wanted to really kind of amp up the attractions at the ranch. So one of the major attractions was, of course, the purposely built 2-mile, approximately just under 2-mile race course at the ranch with the California Sports Car Club of Southern California. And so this is the cover of a program out there. It says 3rd running in March of 1957 there. But actually, the first sports car race was held in August of 1956. And here is a drawing of the racetrack. It was from, now I've gotten a lot of my information from Ranger Tom Young, who is retired like me, and he is to the racetrack history as Don and I are to the film history of the ranch. And so Tom has just been fantastic in what he's been able to find and learn, and speaking to actual racers of that day who probably have passed on. But Tom was at the park before me. I think he came in the 1980s sometime. So the California Sports Car Club was an organization of amateur racers who organized themselves formally by the early 50s to provide venues and events for sport car racing throughout the state. Members of the club were responsible for selling the idea of the racetrack at Paramount Ranch to the investment group who owned the property at the time. So these were amateur racers. A number of them went on to be well known, which Dan Gurney is one off the top of my head, but you'll see some photograph of two important people here toward the end of this little piece on the racing. So this is a slide. It's one of just 3 that was donated to the park from a former volunteer who used to work at the nursery. And this was a day at the races. To the left there, you see what we call now the Longhorn. That's where the law enforcement rangers have offices, fire, and permit has an office there as well. So people here in the foreground are sitting up on a hillside overlooking what's really the straightaway and where the races commenced. So off to the left of the arrow there would be in the general area where the pit crews were. Maybe some of that's out of the picture here as well. And so off they went in the direction straight over, kind of from left to right, up toward the oval, going over the bridge that then would allow them to go under it and continue on. So here's an image of a sports car race out there at the time. It was also opened up to include stock car racing, which is an image here. This is the United States Auto Club racing at Paramount Ranch, November 4th, 1956, 250-mile race. That's a lot of times around the track. So you're seeing 56 Fords at turn 5. You can actually see a pole there in back of them that says 5. So the cars and the people and all in the furthest part of the photo, they're on the other side of the creek there. But this was a time when the creek was largely dry before really all of Agora had built up with hundreds, if not thousands of homes there. And of course, lawn sprinklers and highway medium sprinklers and whatever generated more water. And so the creek became more ephemeral, and that's when you started to see all the willow trees grow up that are recovering after the fire now. But back then, you had more of a clear view back and forth across the creek. This is a recent acquisition of 4 photos that the son of a man who actually took these photos, Tom Young, was able to figure out by seeing the number on the car close up in another photo that had gone off the track. This is one of the early sports car races. Now the race car history of the ranch lasted just under 2 years, so it was very short-lived, but it was certainly significant in Southern California racing history. Of all the race car tracks, and I don't know off the top of my head how many there were, I'll say 4 or 5 or 6, something like that, but the only one that still exists is Willow Springs. But anyway, this is a car, it went off the track, and if you look to the right of the image, beyond that tree and that's sitting on that mound of dirt there, you can see the peeking out a little bit, the bridge that crossed the creek into where the western town was located. And to the left is the mill, as it was known, carpenter shop, now the firehouse for our fire crew there, and the incinerator in front of it that's long gone. And you see the creek looks rather low at times. So again, this is at a time when any water was in there was strictly from the rainy season, and eventually it would dry up. So this last photo of that racing car history, I'm putting in here only because some of you, I hope, have seen Ford versus Ferrari. I thought it was an excellent movie myself, and I really learned for the first time about the racer on the left, who has a significant connection to Paramount Ranch. That's Ken Miles. And Ken Miles was actually out at the ranch helping lay out the course back in 1955, 56. according to Tom and what he's learned, he came out in a VW and rode around and helped lay out the course, the just under 2-mile course. And standing next to him is Carroll Shelby, who was another well-known race car driver. Many of you know the Shelby Mustang car, and he of course was in the movie with Ken Miles, Ford versus Ferrari there. And just to close this out, what Tom had shared with me is that there is no other National Park Service site that has an automobile raceway, a significant racer, Ken Miles, a race car history, and is the only known purposely built automobile racetrack under National Park Service ownership. At the time of the purchase by NPS, approximately 90% of the racetrack was still drivable, including the over and under bridge, which allowed for what you'll see coming up next. Are a few of the movies that had a racing theme to it as well, significant to the movie. This is the Devil's Hairpin. This is really a rear projection shot. You're seeing this lobby car, with the drivers, so to speak, sitting in cars that probably weren't moving in this shot, and a rear projection of more or less of a photograph or a moving image, whatever. But we'll see actually a photograph from the movie. And what's great about this photograph here is that you're seeing the over-under bridge. So the cars had just gone over it. They go around the big loop. This is all property that's at the ranch today. And then they come under the bridge, which a remnant of it is still there. It got even more severely damaged by the Woolsey fire. But where the cars are in the distance, that's basically where the creek is today, right in through there. So it's thick with willow trees and brush on either side. So time and nature have taken over largely what you see in this image here. So in the far background would be Cornell Road. From a favorite TV show of mine, luckily Netflix has many of the seasons and episodes. And this is from The Fugitive. This episode was from 1964, Home is the Haunted. David Jansen is sitting in the passenger seat there. The man in the driver's seat was supposedly his brother in the movie. And this is a straightaway at the ranch. So, in the distance there, would you be going down to, where you can kind of see the Longhorn, the ranger station. And Sugarloaf is that large, partially seen slope in the background. So the car is pointed up toward the direction, of course, of the entrance into the park. And then there's Munster Go Home, which is actually a movie, not the TV show, where Fred Munster at the end of the movie gets in his Munster mobile there and competes against the typical cars of the day there. You see a Mercedes peeking out to the left. This movie is available on DVD and is probably found somewhere, I assume online, or however you might be able to find it. But what's fun is that about almost 10 to 15 minutes toward the end of the film is this race, and you just literally really take in so much of the ranch and the race course. So if you really want to see the ranch and the race course, this would be a movie to try to search out and find. Okay, Don, it's yours.
Oh, got to rearrange my notes. I got them out of order on this one. Okay, this one has some pretty special meaning to me. Everybody that knows me knows that I'm a big, big Disney fan. And as a Disney fan, I'm always looking for Disney connections to Paramount Ranch. But I looked and looked and looked for years and found nothing. But sometimes in our research, we find things when we're not really looking. So, and this is one of those cases. I had popped in The Love Bug to watch it. And as I was watching it, the scene that you see here popped up on the screen, and I nearly fell off my chair because I thought, wait a minute, that looks like Sugarloaf Mountain in the background. So I happened to be friends with the archivist at Disney at the time. So I emailed him and he looked it up in the archives and found call sheets. And sure enough, the Love Bug spent about 2 weeks filming at Paramount Ranch. So when I hoped to find a Disney connection, I never really expected to find something like this, which is one of Disney's most beloved and endearing movies of all times, and certainly one of the most famous movie cars. And I was obsessed with Herbie as a kid, so this one especially has a lot of meaning for me. Later on, I discovered that the sequel, Herbie Rides Again, also did some scenes. Next slide. The Love Bug filmed at Paramount Ranch on a portion of the old racetrack that Mike was just talking about in spring of 1968. I have some photos that I believe are the actual scouting photos when they were scouting to shoot there. The movie was released in March of 1969 and was a top box office grossing movie for that year. The movie starred Gene Jones, Michelle Lee, Buddy Hackett, and David Tomlinson. Michelle Lee, as a little trivia, returned during Dr. Quinn years and directed an episode of Dr. Quinn. Several trick VW cars were created for the movie, including one with a special engine for speed, one that appears to drive itself, and the one you see here that was rigged to pop wheelies, and another one that splits in half with the two halves racing each other. All 4 of those cars were used at Paramount Ranch, and the scenes that were done at the ranch were part of the movie regarding the El Dorado race. It was the start and finish line for that part of the movie. Aside from the live action shots with the actors, background plates were also shot to use later for compositing with footage shot in the studio. Herbie the Love Bug has a following of fans to this day, and a lot of them have their own replica Herbie cars. So when you're out at the ranch, keep your eyes open because you never know. Some of them show up at the ranch from time to time. I actually was lucky one time I was out there giving tours to some Dr. Quinn fans, and a bunch of those Herbie people showed up. Back to you, Mike.
And actually, I had the same experience, Don. All of a sudden, one day, there are 4 or 5 of the Herbie cars out there as well. So yeah, it's interesting. And watch the movie if you have an opportunity. The ending of the race, where Don alluded to cut in half. The announcer, in the movie, and he's saying and the winner is. And he's kind of stumbling because there's 2 halves of the Volkswagen are coming down to the finish line. So to round out our race car pictures, this is a surprise to me when I discovered this. Well, at least we discovered this. If you can't recognize the man standing up in the car there, that's Sylvester Stallone. And the movie was Death Race 2000. I've never seen it, but some footage, it looks like it was a little bit low budget. Would you agree, Don?
More than a little bit. It's one of those Roger Corman type low budget movies, a lot of which did filming at the ranch in the 70s.
But he was probably just months away, if you notice the date, 1975, because it was shortly after that. Then he would become very famous with his first of the Rocky movies. So I wanted to highlight that at the time that the Sportsman's Ranch there is their ownership, was just not the racetrack and filming, but they were open for all sorts of events at that time. We unfortunately have not gotten lucky yet to find some actual photos. Don and I often lament that we know there are families out there, children, grandchildren, or maybe even some people from that time still alive that might have photos, that they took out there as just family photos. So next couple of ones are from newspapers. So this is the Valley Times from April of 1967. And it notes that the Las Virgenes Cinco de Mayo and Fair will be held at the Paramount Ranch and Movie Town, over such and such dates. And you're seeing here Agora High School Chargers cheerleaders, I guess it would be, on a wagon there in front of, which building is this, Don? Is this the one that became Braves Mercantile?
Yeah, this is the building that preceded that building in
Okay.
that spot.
And then there's weekend shows at Paramount Ranch by this man here, Charlie Aldrich. I won't certainly read the whole thing there, but you know, in parentheses or in quotes, Charlie Aldrich's Movie Ranch, and he's a Western star. I've never heard him before. I haven't looked into him yet, but they will have you know, characters such as Bat Masterson, Wild Bill Hickok, and you know, I guess shootouts in the street, et cetera, et cetera. So that's another one. There were different fairs out there, sort of like past the Corriganville years and years ago used to have similar activities for the public. And this is a poster, a flyer for square dancing out at the ranch. But there are many others. They had equestrian events, Boy Scout jamborees, frontier fairs, Girl Scout Junior Roundup, and as I have mentioned, Cinco de Mayo and chili cook-off. So there are all sorts of public events that went on out at the ranch. Okay, Don, this is yours.
And this is one of the biggest and most famous and long standing of those events that took place at the ranch. The legendary Renaissance Pleasure Fair came to Paramount Ranch in 1965. And this is actually an advertising poster that I got off eBay for the 1965 fair. But the fair had started 2 years earlier in 1963, having been dreamed up by the husband and wife team of Ron and Phyllis Patterson, who aspired to create an immersive English country fair celebration of spring, brought to life by actors, musicians, and craft persons, and where attendees could come in costume and be part of the festivities if they wished, and many did. The event kept growing in popularity. The original event kept growing in popularity, necessitating a larger venue, thus eventually landing at Paramount Ranch. Next slide. So in this overview slide, you can see just the amount of space needed only for the parking, much less for the fair itself. It was enormous. And Mike has indicated with arrows the current entrance road going into the ranch and also where the racetrack overpass was. Next slide. The guide map for the 1965 Paramount Ranch Fair proclaimed, "Come ye to the fair. The glove is up and a pleasure fair is come to town. The pageantry and lusty spirit of the pleasure fairs of old England will again come alive in full costume for 3 joyous days in May." It further invites, "This year's sight, a lovely 30-acre tree-filled meadow at Paramount Ranch. This year's pleasure fair shall be a peasant festival, a brugal holiday, a colorful celebration visited by nobles and commons for an afternoon of trading and ribald merriment." In this slide, we can see just how massive the spread of the fair was. And mind you, this doesn't even show the entire fair. It goes on further in the right side of that picture. And just so you can get an idea of where the picture was taken from, Mike has circled the western town side up there in the upper left-hand corner.
This is over in the area what we would call on the park brochure map, Witch's Wood. If you all know where that's located, at the trails that take you over in that direction there, eventually the backdrop trail. Want me to go to the next one?
Next slide. Today, theme parks pursue a trend of immersive lands and attractions, with the Wizarding World at Harry Potter at Universal Studios, Cars Land at Disney California Adventure, and the new Galaxy's Edge Star Wars Land at Disneyland being outstanding examples of that new trend. But decades before this current trend, the Renaissance Fair provided a completely immersive experience. Next slide. Attendees to the fair could enjoy a variety of stage entertainment on numerous stages, such as the Maybauer Theater that is seen in this picture, strolling musicians, parades and processions, craft booths, game booths, and food booths, among other diversions, all staffed by workers in costume, speaking in a manner appropriate to Elizabethan England. And that part sometimes included some body language. Next slide. There is a bit of fair legacy still at Paramount Ranch. Mike and I found this pile of rocks that seemed to be the leftover foundation of something or another. And next slide. In studying old maps and photos of the fair, we came to the conclusion that it is most likely the base of this old market cross, which stood for many years at the fair. And back to you, Mike.
Okay, and what was the last year of the fair at Paramount came under the National Park ownership. I don't know what you know about that. I mean, I think it was the footprint and the impact on the resource was something of concern to the Park Service, but what year did it move on from Paramount?
I believe the last year of the fair was 1988, because the one thing I should point out is this part of the property, when the fair came to the ranch, and also actually by the time it left, was not owned by the same owners that owned the part of the western town, nor the Park Service later. So this part of the property had gone up for sale and was slated to be developed with houses, and that's why the fair had to leave. And I should also add that a lot of the alumni of the old original fair still come out to the ranch just about almost every year and have these reunions. And Mike can tell you a little bit about more about that, because he's attended one or two of those.
Yeah, well, I won't dwell on that very long, other than to say I was out there, I don't know, about 3 years ago, maybe 4. And it was really a great opportunity, just like when I'd run into James Wiley, a previous part of the ownership of the Sportsman's Ranch, that there were some people there who had been back there in those very earliest years, and pointed out, over there was the Fool's Hill, over here was the Queen's Court, and over here was the Maybauer stage. So I was busy and fastly taking notes for it all. But, yeah. So right around that time too, in those mid years of the fair anyway, we had biker movies, and some not so well known, like Angels Hard as They Come is one. And Don, I'll ask you again if you want to point out what the structure is there for perspective.
I believe that this is a church that I believe was probably built specifically for this movie, because it plays pretty significantly into the showdown finale of the movie, and it would have been for perspective next door to where the Ranger House was in more recent years.
All right, thank you.
It didn't last there for very long.
And this man on the left is George Hamilton. I can remember watching this movie at a drive-in movie theater many, many years ago, of course, Evel Knievel in 1971. This is another interesting find that came along. Don, you got this one, didn't you?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to see because I don't know whether it was haze or just the image over time or whatever aging, but the Lady Face Mountain is in the distance there. So George Hamilton portrayed Evel Knievel in a story of his life. All right, Don, this is yours.
Out of order again.
You're up helter skelter. This is a very recent find that I found online, and Don was quite delighted about it.
So there's been a renewed interest in recent years for Charles Manson, but this is Helter Skelter was a 1976 television two-part miniseries about Charles Manson and the Los Angeles Tate LaBianca murders that was based on the book by Vincent Bugliosi. The Paramount Ranch Western town stood in this movie for the long-gone Simi Valley adjacent Spawn movie ranch that had been the home of Manson and his followers. Steve Railsback, who you see in a white shirt sitting, kneeling on the ground, kind of in the off center of the picture there, played Charles Manson, and very chillingly so, I might add, because I remember seeing this movie when it was on. There actually is a real life connection between Paramount Ranch and some of the actual Manson followers. It has been reported that the director of the 1969, again, biker movie, Black Angels, knew the Manson people because he had been filming a documentary about them and invited them out to the ranch to watch filming of his movie. And there is actually another story where some of them tried to move in and live at the ranch, and they were chased off by the manager. So this is not the only time that Paramount Ranch has stood in for Spawn Ranch because of the renewed interest in Manson, again, in recent times that I mentioned. I believe it was 2017, there was a Lifetime movie called Manson's Lost Girls. I actually got to watch the filming of some of that and took a lot of pictures of the set. It got turned into Spawn Ranch once again for that. And then just not long after that, there was an NBC series that was set in the 60s called Aquarius, and they came out and shot about 4 episodes and again turned the Western town into Spawn Ranch. And that's about all I have on Helter Skelter.
And then, of course, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood recently come out, but no connection to Paramount. All right, you recognize this fellow up on the overhang of one of the buildings. It's Chuck Norris. This is Breaker in 1977. He portrays a truck driver in search of his brother who has disappeared in a town run by a corrupt judge. Of course, what do we know about Chuck Norris? Chuck Norris is his karate. So when you look at this, you think, well, is a fight going to break out? Well, sure enough, it did. I've never seen it, but really lucky to have these kind of side-by-side photos to showcase that. All right, Don, yours.
Okay, this is one of my surprising finds that I'm especially proud of. In 1972, the Eagles had recorded their second studio album with songs on a theme of the Old West. It was called Desperado. In December, renowned album photographer Henry Diltz took the band to Western costuming in Hollywood, outfitted them with Western clothing, purchased 1,200 rounds of blank ammo, and took them all out to the Western town at Paramount Ranch to shoot the album's front and back cover photos, as well as a series of photos that were intended to be a centerfold. The band were depicting an outlaw gang, with the front cover depicting the outlaws. Then the centerfold was supposed to show them robbing a bank and the resultant shootout. And then the back cover was supposed to show their ultimate fate. Joining the band members in the photos were Randy Meisner, Don Henley, Glenn Frey, and Bernie Ledden, which are not in this picture, and also J.D. Souther and Jackson Brown. The photos that we're showing you right now were ones that were supposed to be part of that centerfold, which actually got cut and not put in the album. If you want to advance it, Mike. This is another one of those extra photos that was shot. Henry Diltz relates in a May 2007 Uncut magazine feature that recreates what that centerfold would have been had it got done, that the shootout resulted in such a cloud of smoke going up in the air that some neighbors thought the ranch was on fire and they called the fire department. So some fire trucks actually showed up during the photo shoot. In addition to the still photos, they shot some home movie footage, also that was designed to sort of tell the story of the outlaws. And you might say that this would be an early form of, music videos that became really popular later. And if you search Eagles Desperado on YouTube, you might actually find, I actually find some of that footage. And in my opinion, the Eagles is such an iconic band. So I think that this is a really significant part of Paramount Ranch history that we've been able to uncover and let people know about. Back to you, Mike.
All right, Charlie's Angels, 1979 and Angels Trail. And love this iconic image that I guess was the lead in, I didn't watch the show, but very often, but very iconic image here.
We'll go back. I'm not ready yet for the next one. So around 1978 to 79, just after this era of the low budget movies, Roger Corman type and the biker rebel movies, then we started having the era of a bunch of the television shows coming to the ranch in 78 and 79. And some of those shows included BJ and the Bear, Dukes of Hazzard, Chips, and Charlie's Angels. And even the younger folks probably know of most of these shows because now we have a lot of television stations that are showing these old shows. Now, now you can advance to the next one. So this season 4 episode of Charlie's Angels is notable in that it featured a return of Farrah Fawcett to the show in a guest appearance as former angel with the famous hair, Jill Monroe. Farrah appears in scenes shot at the ranch, as does series regular Cheryl Ladd, who is seen here, who played Farrah's younger sister, who replaced Farrah's character after she left. The reason Farrah is returning to Charlie's Angels is because she had lost a lawsuit brought to her by producer Aaron Spelling, and part of the settlement was that she had to come back and do several guest shots on the show. Lucky for us, because it brought her and her famous hair to Paramount Ranch. The storyline had Jill Monroe being taken hostage while at a gas station by some mountain men, the guys seen here, a mountain man and his sons, and taken to an old ghost town, our western town, at Paramount Ranch. There are also scenes in the open landscape like you see here. Of course, the Angels had to race against time to find and save Jill. And I would add that the old rock store is also seen in this episode. That's it.
Well, LA Times in 1980, June 26 to be precise, of 1980, announced that private ranch to be added to Mountain Park. Sale ends controversy over proposal to build 159 homes on site. The 336-acre Paramount Ranch will be added to the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area when escrow closes on July 27th. This is really a mock-up. I've learned this is not the actual sale sign there. This was put there for more or less, photo op, just to showcase that it's been sold and purchased. And pictured here is somebody that Don and I value a lot. This is Alice Allen. Alice was the very first ranger to manage permits for the park, meaning, of course, filming, but weddings, public events, any of that sort for large group gatherings. And Alice retired before me. I think it was 2003, I want to say, but we talk on and off, and her memory and ability of recall is just amazing. The detailed information that Alice has passed on about her firsthand experience out there is just, dumbfounds me sometime. I wish my memory was that great on recall. Well, at the time of the sale of the ranch to the National Park Service, there was a man, kind of like the last man standing, if you will, out there, and he's seen in this picture with his car. That's D. Cooper. D. Cooper had a long career in the film industry, many B movies, cowboy movies. He was a stuntman, lesser character roles and all, going back, I believe, to the 1940s when he was probably quite a young man. Pictured there with him is one of the earliest park rangers that worked at the park when it was established. Her name was Susie Cutler. And off to the left there behind him, that is the mill, again, with the incinerator out front. So they're along the straightaway entrance there. D. Cooper leased the ranch from 1962 up until it was sold. At least those are records and notations we found there. So so he was there at the very end. In fact, Alice Allen got to know him very well. And she actually helped move him, help him with his packing because he was living on the ranch. I believe he may have been in the little house that's on Cornell. Do you know if that's true, Don?
That's what I've heard.
Yeah.
I always assumed he lived in the caretaker's house. And
oh, yeah, it could have been, yeah. So,
but recently, I think information came from Alice that it was that other house.
But either way, he lived out at the ranch there. And Alice evidently was very fond of him and, something about him, but she had asked at her retirement, when you retire from at least this park, they would often ask you, what would you like as a going away gift? And so she asked for a bust to be made of, D. Cooper's head. I should ask her if she ever got that, because often these gifts were given after your retirement party if you had a party. But one of the more recent images that we acquired is this shot of what D. Cooper had done out there to add to the attractions of the ranch. He established a rodeo. And so that's the rodeo enclosure there in the sort of the middle of the image there. And you can see parts of the old buildings of the western town at the time there. And kind of in the center of the photo there, hidden in the eucalyptus grove, that's the caretaker's house there. So this is going to be one of my favorite parts of the presentations as we move along, into the latter half of the presentation here. Alice has such great stories on this here. This is the TV show Fall Guy, and the episode was A Silent Partner from 1982. Well, the caretaker's house and the bunkhouse were two buildings that were in not very good condition. And the Park Service had to make decisions on what they would continue to maintain or, invest in. And I don't know how much, their budget was available, but, decisions had to be made for better, for worse. It's like, many people were quite upset that the church was taken down for Dr. Quinn when that show ended. But anyway, the bunkhouse was evidently in quite poor condition and it was going to be taken down. And Alice said, well, let me see if I can get some kind of a film company out here, production company, to incorporate the destruction of it, save us some money. So somehow she talked him into it. And the promo poster here is very apropos with that truck you see and some men diving for cover underneath of it. So the episode that they came up with from the Fall Guy, Alice actually contacted the production company. And so in the script, this pickup truck with a homemade camper on it was to be catapulted off of a ranch and put airborne with a booster engine that would help get it airborne for whatever short distance it had to go. And it was to crash into the bunkhouse. What you're seeing under the pickup truck there is the horse barn, or the sound barn, it was more recent years known as. And you can see some flame there. They had set some piping up with gas jets that they could ignite through little, I guess, like pinholes, actual flame. and that the house was going to explode. And of course, there's cuts and edits. They would get the stuntman out of the vehicle there. The vehicle was specially built with padding and wire mesh over the inside of the windshield, and he was all done up in sorts of padded protection and all. I think the worst he suffered, if you will, if he had to, unfortunately, was a bruised nose, which was pretty lucky. However, when you take a shot like this for a developed script, you only get one take on it. So as I say, the truck was supposed to go into the building, but what actually happened is it went over it. And it landed on the other side. And this is an after picture. It's not of that moment because Alice told me that wooden camper on the back of the pickup truck was pretty destroyed, broken up, and fell apart. You see the front bumper there took a hit, it appears, and so the bunkhouse is still intact. And so they took a break in filming, but only for a few days to pull off what would be part 2 of the actual shoot to complete the what was in the script, or how they probably altered it a little bit, perhaps. It's hard to see in here. I can see it, but there's a chain coming off of the front of the vehicle. It was probably wrapped around the front axle, I would guess there, and it's sitting on some blocks there. And so Alice told me they had some other larger vehicle or whatever, where they were going to give it a, in other words, there was some slack in the chain, and the vehicle attached to it was going to power up. And so the chain was almost like snap, and the truck would kind of leap forward, and that part they were going to film. And at the same time, they were going to ignite the building. And then almost immediately after that, the vehicle was going to explode. So here's what happens next. A fiery ball. So you're seeing the truck on fire. Of course, the stuntman is well out of the vehicle. And then you, of course, are seeing the building in flames as well. And that's the eucalyptus grove in the background. And if you notice to the bottom left here, these fellas running for cover in the scene. So right immediately after this, the camera stops running, and men come out to put the flames out. So you see the remains of the bunkhouse, the smoking of the pickup truck as the fire is being put out there. So this was probably one of the biggest stunts and certainly pyrotechnic portions of the episode that we've ever seen at Paramount Ranch. There have been some others like what you'll be seeing from the A-Team, but I don't think I show the actual explosion portion of the show. And there's a guest star in the episode right there at the bottom. That's Mickey Gilley, a country and western singer. So that was The Fall Guy. Quite the film shoot to experience. So what was very apropos of that period on American television were variety shows. Many well-known American singers would have variety shows like Bing Crosby. In this case, Johnny Cash. It was a special. It was called Johnny Cash Cowboy Heroes from 1982. And Johnny's off to the left there, actually perched on a little platform that's a part of that's where I need carry there, a hydraulic that would lift him up, and he was over, like an overhang of a building there on the first run of buildings coming into the western town, and he's introducing his guest star, which is Glenn Campbell off to the right there, who's going to sing a song, and I believe you could find this on YouTube. So if you're interested, remember or note down Johnny Cash, Cowboy Heroes, 1982, and you can actually get to see this, I believe. I should also, before I take this to Don, just mention that there were other shoots of similarity out there, or at least it wasn't about so much filming a movie or a TV show, but in recent years, Eric Clapton had gone out there for an album cover shoot, just like the Eagles had. And in more recent years, Julia Roberts had come out for a kind of a fashion shoot and interview for In Style magazine. All right, Don.
I would add that Bruce Springsteen also shot a album cover out there too. So as Mike mentioned, the town was getting to be in pretty ragged shape from the time that the Park Service picked up the ranch, bought the ranch in 1980. And in the early years, you know, the town was in pretty rough shape. And as Mike just illustrated, they were looking for ways to, you know, get rid of buildings economically when possible. But it got to the point where things were in such rough shape that it was decided that it was unsafe for the public that was visiting the park, and that they would build a new town. So the park hired James F. Plater, who was a production designer who had done some set designs for the town's buildings for a 1981 comedy Western TV show that had filmed at the ranch called Best of the West. Mr. Clater drew up a series of sketches for a new town, and you're seeing one of them here. This is the sketch for a hotel facade that was planned that would hide some new restrooms behind it, and as you all know, that happened. Note that in this sketch, the little room that we knew as being on the left side of the hotel is depicted on the right side of the hotel here. They realized that that wasn't going to work out the best, so when it was built, they flipped it and put it on the left, the way that we knew it. If you want to advance the slides. Now, I want to emphasize here that the new town was not a replica of the old Hertz era town. None of those facades or buildings were reproduced or rebuilt. A commonly repeated bit of misinformation is that this new town was a duplication of the old town, but that's not true. It was totally new. The only thing old about it, and if you want to go ahead and advance, is that some of the old, they saved about 4 of the old Paramount barns, and this is one of them. They refaced the old barn and then put new facades. And the facades that you see here are the same ones in the previous picture in the sketch. So they built all of these new facades on top of some of the old barns, and then also built several new buildings as well. If you want to go ahead and advance. And then this is just another view of the construction when it's a little bit further along. Construction began in the later half of 1984 and finished up in 1985. Some months later, a company picnic vendor seeking a permit to use the town helped the Park Service to paint the buildings and add some signs because they had kind of run out of money and they weren't able to do that right away after the town was built. Next.
Okay, well, take it. So I alluded to the A-Team coming out in 1986 in this case for Mission of Peace. Don, did they come out more than once?
I believe the Fall Guy and the A-Team altogether filmed about 6 episodes
Okay.
at the ranch.
So you're seeing George Papard here and Mr. T, of course. And what's significant about this episode is that those of you, who know the town know where Bray's Mercantile was, and later, more recent years, it had become more or less a saloon. And you're looking straight at it there in the picture on the right. So a production company had built, if you will, a facade, a covering over that building, and it was known as the Mission de la Paz. The setting was in Texas. The storyline was the A-Team was hired by a group of senior citizens to save their mission home and tourist attraction from some developers who wanted to tear it down and run them out of town. And so, Don, of course, this is to you.
I would just add as a little side note to the previous that at the end of the episode, this tourist attraction was sort of a fake one. But it becomes a national park at the end of the episode. I think maybe that was a little nod to our park, I like to think. So this next one is pretty special to me because I more or less lived Dr. Quinn during the years that they were there. So I'm going to tell you a little personal story because it is very personal to me. On New Year's Day, 1992, I returned from a holiday visit to my family in Texas and drove over to the ranch as soon as I got home. I just couldn't wait. My jaw dropped when I walked into the western town because it looked completely different and a church had sprung up out in the meadow. I had not known before this about what was going to happen. I didn't know that a lady doctor was about to move in and make a lasting impact on Paramount Ranch. Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman, was created by Beth Sullivan, who was also executive producer and a friend of mine now. The series featured Jane Seymour, Joe Lando, and a talented ensemble cast, many of whom you see in this group photo. The series brought many, many guest stars to Paramount Ranch, including music greats like Johnny and June Cash, Kenny Rogers, and he was a part of this episode from this picture, Willie Nelson, and a lot of others. If you want to go ahead and advance. Western Town had been dramatically transformed into Colorado Springs, Colorado for Dr. Quinn. Production designer for the pilot movie, Albert Heschong, had turned the town into the most authentic and realistic frontier town that it had ever been. It was like stepping back in time to the 1800s. Here you see them filming one of the Christmas episodes where they brought in a live Christmas tree. Next slide. Over the course of the series, additional sets were built around the ranch, including a schoolhouse, a hotel, 2 homesteads, and a train station. Some track was laid and a real operating narrow gauge steam train became part of the town. It was a wonderful time for Paramount Ranch. This train actually lives up in the central coast of California now, and I actually got a chance to go up and ride on it one time, which was pretty exciting. In all, the Dr. Quinn production was at Paramount Ranch from December 1991 for set construction for the pilot until the series was canceled in 1998 after its 6th season. The impact of the show is almost immeasurable. The Western town looked the best it had ever been and began to draw more and more visitors because of the show. Paramount Ranch went from being one of LA's best kept secrets to becoming known around the world because of Dr. Quinn. To this day, we still have many devoted Dr. Quinn fans coming to the ranch to see where the magic of Dr. Quinn happened. Many of them I have given special tours to, and Mike has also run into some of them from time to time and showed them around. On a personal level, Dr. Quinn has gifted me with the friendship of many of these fans from around the country and indeed from around the world, as well as friendship from some of the people that worked on the show as well. Back to you.
Thanks, Don. So there were many lesser known films out there, like you've seen, the biker movies, if you will. But I also I'm showcasing a film like this because Paramount Ranch was, again, on a journey as a backdrop for another part of the world. In this case, Vietnam. Missing Brendan is a story about a soldier who was killed and is missing in action, if you will. I've never found him, and his father and siblings go in search of him over in Vietnam. So a small part of the ranch filled in for that, and here are a couple of photos I took back then when I was still working. And this is like Don had experienced many firsthand experiences of filming out the ranch, and this is one of the real true joys of having a active movie ranch, if you will, for filming, is that in the permits that are issued by the Park Service, every production company is told in the permit that the park is not going to be shut down so they can film, no matter how big their star 8 cast is or what they have in store. The park does not shut down. And as I tell many visitors who come through there about this, is that we, of course, have things like weddings there, and I'll use this as an example. The public can still come to the ranch, but it's just common sense and courtesy. You wouldn't walk right into the middle of a wedding or start nibbling at the receptions, table of buffet, whatever food. And so you can watch from a safe distance sometimes. I mean, the film crew and production company does have some ability to, kind of rope off, if you will, because again, they don't want people walking into the middle of some filming or even setting up. So this is Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and I took this photo out there. And what's fascinating about this, and what visitors can often, if they get lucky, because we don't advertise that there's something shooting out here, you just get lucky and stumble on it. And so Salem the cat, they've had both a real cat and then one here. I often want to say animatronic, but Don, what did you refer to it as? I know
a puppetronic, because it was partly a puppet and partly animatronic.
Yeah. So anyway, this was not the real Salem the cat, and they had it perched up on the seat of this wagon that you just see a part of, and then a real live horse there. So you'll notice that there are reins that are in the cat's hands, but if you look here, you actually see one of two reins on either side of the horse, because what I witnessed is that as they were setting this shot up, they had two people who got in the back of this wagon, sort of like the back of a pickup truck bed. Nothing there, and they got in there and laid down on their stomachs, prone. One was a man who was actually going to control the horse rather, and had the reins in his hands, and right alongside him was a woman who was operating the cat. And then they put a sort of like a second level over top of the two of them, and then they piled on boxes and even had like a wire mesh cage with a couple of chickens in it. And so Salem the cat rode into town, and then Sabrina and the other cast dressed in cowboy outfits came out of the saloon, which it was behind them there. So that's how they pulled that off. And anyone who knows about horses, I know Debbie out there would, that no matter what, it's an animal, and it can be unpredictable. And if that horse ever spooked, that would not been something that they'd want to happen. But everything went off smoothly, and it was just a fun experience to be able to observe it. And then 2000, as we're getting here close to closing out, the Flintstones, Viva Rock Vegas. I don't know how to describe, what part of the world this was, because it's going back, so to speak, prehistoric times, blending that with the old South, with a sort of a prehistoric antebellum mansion, if you will. But these are the stars of the movie out there at the ranch that had this picture taken. And so this is one of these fortuitous times when I was working, I made contact with the studio and asked them respectfully, would they be willing to provide us with some photographs from the film shoot, and that it's our job to preserve the history of the recreation area, in this case the ranch. And if we have photo documentation, it's a great way to document the film history of the ranch. And they were very kind, and they gave us 3 or 4 photos. And so I'll showcase this one. That's the actress Kristen Johnson, who was better known around that time from Third Rock from the Sun. So this is out on Marco Polo Hill, where this set was built, this mansion, Slag Hoople Manor. And those of you who tuned in last time, when I first highlighted this location, it was from the movie Adventures of Marco Polo. So the park has attached that name to this physical location, Marco Polo Hill. But this was just strictly a facade. I observed the building of this. I got to take a number of photos, and the Park Service will allow sets like this to be built in other parts of the ranch, but only if it's what's considered to be a well-disturbed area. Native vegetation is really not present at all. The ground has been disturbed, and there are locations at the ranch that you can easily see where there's a flattened dirt pad, which didn't exist naturally, that over time, either the studio or someone else leveled it off, and this is one of those instances here. So they actually drove some telephone poles, if you will, into the ground to be the anchors to support the facade. And here's a side view that I took of it. So it took about, I guess, about 5 days to build this, and then the film shoot was relatively short after that, and then they took it all down. And this great photo was taken by a friend, some of you may know him, Brian Rooney, author of 3 Magical Miles. Brian enjoys doing panoramic photos with a large 8x10 camera that he had at one time. And so he did this beautiful panoramic here. And this is Carnival from 2003, an HBO production. And the town was turned into the era of the Dust Bowl, Depression era America, 1934-35 period in this case. And of course, and you know, this included the arrival of people from the Midwest fleeing the Dust Bowl and the loss of their livelihood and agricultural, and because of what the Dust Bowl did to their fields of planting and all. And it was I tried watching an episode. It was a little too dark for me, if you will, but again, it turned the ranch, the western town, into another period, if you will, of America here. So you can see they put a totally new facade on, you know, what was Bray's Mercantile as a saloon, off there to the left in the distance. And the first run of buildings that you walk by coming into the town, when it was there, was turned into a sort of like a Chinese resident street we've ever since referred to as Chin's. And they built, by the park's permission, this 2-story overhang porch, if you will, which stayed there. I found out later that the posts were 4-sided with wood, but underneath them was a metal post that gives that significant support there. So this is Carnival from 2003. It was a short-run show. Don, do you remember? It was like 1 or 2 seasons at most, right?
The show ran 2 seasons, but only the first season filmed at the ranch.
Yeah, right. And this is a great photo. Don, is a credit to you, right?
Yeah, that's my photo.
Yeah, so it really has atmosphere with the smoke, if you will, in the shot here. So this is really close to camera rolling here, and the period cars, et cetera, et cetera. So incorporated into this particular scene here was that the Chin's, where the overhang, the 2-story porch there would be, that there was a fire, and like Hollywood craftsmen can do, then they charred, if you will, and turned the front end there into the burned remains, which you'll see here in the next one. And sadly, you're seeing the witness tree over there to the left that had to come down due to the Woolsey fire. And as park rangers know so well, is that this evidently was shot during the winter season because the Valley Oak had lost its leaves. And then in 2006, we almost had we had back-to-back film shoots with major celebrities, actors and actresses. So this is Norbit from 2006. I was out there to watch and observe some of this, as I was the next one will come after it. What's fascinating about this is, of course, Eddie Murray on the right, and Thandie Newton, if I got that right, Don, who's more well known now from Westworld. So standing there. So the house that you see in the background there, well, it's very interesting. They built 2 houses, but not 2 full houses. They built the front of the house along the straightaway, kind of opposite the ranger station, the Longhorn. there, and then the back side of the house was built on the northernmost part of our ranch property. You see Ladyface Mountain there in the distance. So the backyard was almost like a farmyard in some cases there, but that's the front and back of the house that they just decided to do for the film shoot. So it was quite fascinating and again, this is great stuff if you're a visitor to come out and see, that you really get a peek behind that curtain when it's been pulled back to see how films are made. So within a couple months period or less, the other movie from 2006 was The Lake House with Sandra Bullock and Keanu Reeves on the right there. So The Lake House itself was not at the ranch. I don't know where that was, but the one and only scene that they shot at the ranch was the mailbox scene. So on the right here, you see the set folks setting up the set there. They planted the mailbox in. They're putting some fake snow down. They've got an old pickup truck there, and you see on the left Sandra Bullock. What I don't have included here is I don't have a good quality shot of her at the mailbox with the dog. That was her dog. They had done a number of takes on this scene where she walks up to the mailbox to check the mail. This was a central part of the movie. And the dog, after a number of takes, started to, be distracted, and the trainer off camera was unable to control it as well. The dog was supposed to look up at the mailbox and to Sandra, so it was starting to fail at doing that. So they brought out a very tall ladder, and the trainer went up it, and it seemed to be something new for the dog to look at, and so they got the dog to look up in the air at the trainer, and they were able to finish the shot there. So as we're getting down to the end of the presentation, one of the most significant pictures in the star capacity of this movie was American Sniper from 2014, and you're seeing two views here of this bunker enclosure for a shooting range. So in the movie, the soldiers with this special army unit of snipers, if you will, of the Vietnam era, or excuse me, is that right? What, Don, was this from? This is from more the Iraq, Afghanistan period, is that correct?
Yeah.
Excuse me. And so you're seeing in the right there, downrange, it's kind of hard to make out where the targets are located, but you can see Sugarloaf there. And the star of the movie and the director helped make it significant, Bradley Cooper on the left and Clint Eastwood on the right. Brian Rooney, like me, he had contacted Warner Brothers and Clint Eastwood's production company, and they were kind enough to provide a few photos to us. And so this is one great photo that they included. Now, as we really get close to the end here, Don and I became well aware, as others have, that Paramount Ranch was stepping into the age of internet-based shows. This is Escape the Night from 2018, a YouTube production. Is that right, Don?
Yes, YouTube.
Yeah, it's shown on YouTube. You have to be a subscriber. So this is kind of half reality, half scripted show, and it was filmed at night, as the title is very telling, Escape the Night. So these contestants were put through this rigorous course of obstacle courses, following clues. And I mean, I wasn't there late at night to watch it. I just went out to photograph the sets as they were being built. Out in the meadow where the church is, they had a Ferris wheel, a series of booths for games of chance, etc., like that. But this very colorful shot was right in the central part of the town, and Fat Man Slim's there was, again, the saloon, or Bray's Mercantile, and of course you see the merry-go-round there. So I have yet to see watch this as well, because I say you have to be a subscriber. But it was very interesting. Just a couple of quick highlights. This is the only time that I saw any kind of a set being built within the pavilion, where we would hold anything from events to there would be wedding receptions. Crews would be fed there from filming, and but they actually built 4 connecting rooms, and then where they connected at that central point, there was sort of like a spinning it's like when you go into some buildings, you have that revolving door almost, and so not having seen it, but supposedly, the people in the show, they would go into that revolving door and maybe they'd get spun around and they get dumped in one of the rooms. And one of the rooms was built totally upside down, so you have furniture attached to the ceiling and all. So, and there was also an obstacle course of ropes that at one point were built in the pavilion as well that they had to navigate. So as we close out this production with this presentation with one of the most prestigious productions, HBO came back after they had done Carnival, but they stayed a little longer, and they first came out in 2016. And I want to credit a couple of photos here to Carrie Perkins, who is joining us. Carrie is an incredibly talented photographer, and you'll see this in another photo that he had taken out there to capture and document the filming of Westworld. And so they were first there in summer of 2016, and they shot episodes that were, of course, going to be seen in the first airing. So when this was being shot, the show had not even been on HBO. This was season 1. So this is just an off-camera shot of some actors practicing, I guess, drawing on one of those. Westworld, for those of you who don't know, was I hate to use the word takeoff, but they used the 1970s film Westworld that starred Yul Brynner with people who look like were robots that look like real people there and all. But anyway, I won't go into it much because I know it's still out there. And with the loss of both Paramount Ranch and Melody Ranch, where they filmed, they've changed the Old West to what is it now, Don?
Right now, the Melody Street is a 1930s Los Angeles for a Showtime show.
Okay. So anyway, that era of the Old West has changed. So the ending episode, and this is again a Carrie Perkins picture. This is from the ending episode of season 1, where all these tables are put out there, and look at all the beautiful lights and on the building and strung across the top. This is just a gorgeous photo, and this deck extends out beyond the saloon, if you will, or Bray's Mercantile, looking toward the church that was built purposely for Westworld. And I might quickly say that many people are certainly happy to see a church in any Old West setting. There was always a church and a schoolhouse usually. And the art director didn't want to leave the church there because this hadn't even aired yet. And if they did, he was concerned it might be used in some other production before the show even aired. And so he had every intent of having it taken down. But Catherine Beverly Bishop, who was in charge of permits at the time, she was kind of the lead on wanting to keep it, and I was too. And eventually some management people, I guess, bought into it, so they allowed it. So the art director did have one choice that he would make, and that is that he would make some alterations so it wouldn't look the same. But all they were is they changed the paint color to white, and they took the steeple off the church. And when they came back, they painted it back to its original color and put the steeple up. And they were there for 3 different times. Of course, the last time was quite significant in the change they made, which you'll see here. So the Wolseley fire had taken place. The town had burnt to the ground, but the church survived, as did the train station. Don took this shot. He was able to get out there when they were filming. And just like HBO had done for Chins there, they charred the church up quite well. This hasn't aired, is that correct, Don?
It has, I believe.
Oh, okay, all right. So again, I haven't seen it, so I can't comment on it. So this essentially brings us to the end of the presentation. I'd like to thank Don for being my co-presenter on this, but I also want to say this has been an effort, a collaboration, and so I want to showcase our team here. So on behalf of all of us, this has been a production brought to you by California's Golden Parks, tongue-in-cheek, of course. Don wanted to include a nod to Huell Hauser, the beloved TV host for so many treasured tours around California and its history. In this case, it was California's Golden Parks episode. And you see Don and I off to the left there, Huelhauser in the center, Cameron, the cameraman, and then Randy Zimmerman next to him, who is, I believe, on the Zoom with us here, and Judy Joy Lively, who has moved on now. She works in the Washington, D.C. parks. So we bring it to a close. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks very much.
Well, you're very welcome. So Sarah and Leah, hit stop share? Or?
Yeah, hit stop sharing.
Okay.
There were a couple of questions that came in during your presentation. One was, where and when was the pool at Paramount?
Well, it was out. Of course, it was long gone when I got here. I believe the Park Service filled it in and covered it over. But it was out in the big open meadow where the church is. I don't know exactly where. Do you know, Don?
I don't know the exact spot either.
But that's where it was located.
Okay. And I think, Don, you answered this. The fair, the Renaissance Fair started in '65. What was the last year before it moved? I think you said the 80s?
Yes, the Renaissance Fair came to Paramount Ranch in 1965. It ran 65 and 66. The land went up for sale for the 67 season, so they had to go away for that year. The land did not sell, so they came back in, excuse me, I've been breathing smoke for the last 2 weeks because of fires over here in Monrovia where I live. They came back in 1968, and they were there until 1988 was the last year when they left, when the land went up for sale again.
Okay.
I just saw Carrie Perkins put up a trivia notation that the headstones next to the church from Westworld, correct? Carrie, nod your head there. They had names of the crew members on the tombstones.
I have a picture of the production manager lying down next to his own grave, like he just crawled out of it. It's pretty funny.
That's good. One of the other questions was your image of the Eagles, the gentleman with the curly hair, was that Bernie Linden?
I don't know the band members well enough, especially back then, I don't really know, to be quite honest.
Okay.
Yeah, all I know is Don Henley and Glenn Fry, who just very quickly, I had a quick conversation with Glenn Fry in a restaurant one day, many years ago, of course, before he passed away in Westwood. And he was such a gentleman when I kind of stopped him as he walked by my table, headed to the restroom. Terrible time to stop. Oh, no, actually, I caught him on the way back. I at least gave him the courtesy to go to the restroom and come back.
In the early 1990s, Glenn Fry actually did a music video at the ranch in the pavilion. They kind of turned it into like a nightclub kind of setting, and he did played a song in there.
Oh, wow. Neat. Lay put up the link for the California Golden Parks Paramount Ranch Huelhauser clip. So if anybody wants that, they can get that.
It's found through Chapman University, correct, Don?
Correct. And once this goes up on YouTube, I'll try to go on and add a few links to things on YouTube that we've talked about that people can look up if they want to as well.
Okay, great. Anybody else have any questions for Mike or Don?
We've got just a ton of information flowing out of our heads, so ask away if you have anything.
Or you can, contact us by email. I'm sure Don is okay. Got
Definitely.
our emails from either Lay or Sarah.
Very good. Very good.
I see like the number 33 down there by the chat room icon. Are there no other questions in that number?
No, no other questions. There were different comments that came in, a lot of thank yous. Oh, Sandy asked, when will you guys do episode 3?
That's well, of course, we've gone from the beginning to the end. If we did episode 3, we would have to, of course, put images in from other productions, I suppose. So I'll let you all vote on that through the chat room, maybe. But I will say, as I've offered to Sarah, that I can do a presentation on the film history within the National Recreation Area, which will take us from all the way to the east of Franklin Canyon, and and back to the west here as well. I could even include the Conejo Valley, or do one separately on the Conejo Valley, and then what I did during the centennial of the National Park Service in 2016. Many national parks developed special programs to celebrate significant connections to their own parks, history, ecosystems, cultural history, whatever. But so I got the okay to do a special presentation for our park on the film history of the National Park Service. So I took you from the Statue of Liberty, on the East Coast all the way to the West Coast, and of course much in the American West as well. So I still have that PowerPoint in the can, so to speak. Happy to do that.
Great. Well, it looks like there's an interest in having you all back to talk more about film history in the park.
My pleasure.
So,
Yeah, there's a lot more we could talk about, so we'll see
Yeah.
if we can make it happen.
So if you just quickly notice the picture behind me here. The Mike was there too that day. And I believe this wasn't it Drunk History, Mike?
No, it's called Funny or Die.
Oh yeah, Funny or Die, right. And
Internet show.
Right. They were doing a spoof on the show, and they had Dr. Quinn was a cocaine dealer. And people were crawling up to her door to get to it was pretty crazy, but it was a great day. These are amazingly nice people from Hollywood.
And I want to add in is that if you ever follow anything or you hear interviews from actors, especially TV series, many of them will allude to the fact that over the period of years of a production, especially of a TV show, is that there's bonding and friendships. I mean, it's not to say that everybody gets along, but you get to be like a family, and that happened with Dr. Quinn. And correct me if I'm wrong, Don, but this was really a first significant time for the cast to come out all together in this number. And I, Carrie and I were those flies on the wall, and getting to see their interactions, and it was just like, oh, remember this, remember that, and it was just a really special moment. And when they all we got this group shot, Carrie's quality camera and all, it just got this beautiful shot. This was a very special day. And then there was a reunion, a year or two after that. So we got to see it repeated, but it was really for the fan club, right, Don?
Yeah. A lot of the cast are still very good friends and keep in touch. And I'm actually in touch with a few of them myself still, which is pretty amazing considering how long ago that show was at the ranch.
If I remember, Don, if it came from you or wherever, is that this was very important to have this reunion that Jane Seymour was very much a part of pulling off, because she wanted to have it while everybody was still here, if you will.
Absolutely.
And it's rather prophetic, because I don't know, it was been a few years after it, but Orson Bean, who was Bray's Mercantile, he had passed away in a very tragic way. So it was very bittersweet, I'm sure, for them when that happened. But so sweet and happy they were that he was there. And he was quite animated. It was a joy to listen to when he was just talking to people. Okay.
All right, well, I think that's it for the questions, but thank you both so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge about Paramount and the film history. It's been great. I know I've learned a lot, and it sounds like people are excited to have you come back and speak more about film history in the Santa Monica Mountains. So thank you both so much.
My
Oh, it's
pleasure.
Our pleasure. I mean, filming, movies, TV shows, are a touchstone for a lot of us because of, themes, what people wear, they become fads, and the world loves movies, and we love showing a peek behind it. So hope to see you all again. And Sarah or Leigh, if maybe you could send Don and I, all of the comments, just in case, there's anything that we might want to respond to at another time.
Mhm.
All right. Well, goodbye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. And a shout out to Randy.
Yeah, Randy, I hope you got to see this. I saw your name, but I see all these dark boxes. And,
Thank you, Mike and Don. Devin had to go tend to her horse, but she wanted me to tell you she really enjoyed the presentation, and it's great for us being so far away when you're having them on Zoom. So
yeah,
one of the benefits of the pandemic.
yeah, right.
welcome.
So
One of the few.
Leigh, when you see all these darkened boxes with a line through the audio, does that mean they missed it or didn't hear it, or?
That just means they're muted.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay, good.
Just means they don't have their picture.
Oh, there
turned
I
on.
see Steve Matsuda. Anyway, I don't want to belabor it trying to say hello, everybody, but it's a great chance. You miss from friendly faces and people that you've gotten to know. All right.
All right, bye, everyone.
Bye,
Have
everybody.
a rest of your weekend.
Thank you.
You're welcome.